It's me, Sean Capri. I'm glad you're here because you're listening to the most horsepowerful podcast on the internet. It's the Xbox Drive. I'm on a Skype call with my friend Ryan Turford, the man on the moose, and on our journey today. What the heck is on our journey today? A bunch of games are coming to Game Pass, and oh yeah, Bungie got bought by Sony. So what does that mean for Xbox? Let's jump on into the Xbox Drive. Bomb!
No power greater than X.
Hello, Sean Capri.
I almost had you on that one, Ryan Turford. I almost had you cracking up. You'd have to do a bunch of editing. You might have to make me do another take. How are you doing, my friend?
I didn't know where the heck you were going with that one. So, I was just as mystified as you are. I'm doing well. It's been a, very snow-filled day today here in London, but it's also been, super rainy too. So,
Oh, yeah.
things are good.
Here's our weather update. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad. I ask how you are, not how the weather is outside.
Well,
you know what I mean? Are you okay?
Well,
You're deflecting. You're deflecting a little bit.
Anyways, we should probably move on and talk about Xbox,
Deflecting.
of course. So let's clean the garage a little bit. So folks at home, if you want to support the show, there's a number of awesome ways to do that. Number one, of course, subscribe to us on your podcast feed of choice. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify. We're all the places you find podcasts. So check us out there. Also, leave us a little rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or even maybe an Apple Podcast review. That actually helps the show in a big way. Also, if you want to see our beautiful faces every single week, head over to YouTube, youtube.com/UniCapri. Obviously, like, subscribe, share, all those things that people tell you to do on YouTube. And last but not least, if you want the show early as well, patreon.com/UniCapri is how you do that. Throw a little tip in the old tip jar and out comes content. And also with Patreon, Sean, I just want to say thank you to all of our new patrons, because we actually have a lot of new patrons, like Court Lalonde, like Rebecca, like a few others as well. I just don't have them written in front of me. Tony Baker, for example, upgraded his membership to Gold, Sean. I couldn't believe it. So this is, of course, brought on because Sean made this little tweet on Twitter with like a little carrot on the end of the stick. So Sean, what was that thing again that you said we'd do?
First, I want to say thank you to Court Lalonde, Rebecca, Dads After Dark, Nick Metzger, and also TPR for jumping in as well. Thank you guys for joining in. I realized that we'd been kind of sitting at 67 patrons for quite some time, and I'm a child, so I wanted to get us to 69. Nice. So I said, I put out a promise. If we can get to 69 patrons before Wednesday, then I will draw an image of Ryan Turford riding a moose. And wouldn't you know it, Ryan, who knew that people wanted this so badly? Because we blew past 69 patrons almost instantaneously with the support of all these wonderful people. And that the deal still goes. It's for all. It's not just the new people. It's all of the patrons. Now that we're beyond 69 patrons, I still have to sit down and actually do this. But my mind is kind of like going a little bit here, Ryan, what I'm going to be drawing. I mentioned on the Nintendo Drive yesterday, I think it's going to involve Bullwinkle. I think I might be drawing you as a Mountie, a Royal Canadian Moose Police, as the RCMP is obviously known as.
Of course.
So people can, it's an exclusive little perk that maybe we're onto something here, Ryan Turford.
Maybe people really like this. Like maybe we need to, come up with some kind of drawing of Matt in some kind of way that like this as well.
Oh, I like it.
Some kind of, because Kato's already got her thing. She's already kind of like a potato with putting her face on it. That's already a thing that kind of exists.
That's probably, I should start there actually. Yeah. Like I'm learning how to draw. I should start with a potato rather than like the intricacies of a Ryan Turford and a moose. Like there's a lot of anatomy I got to work out here, man.
There is a little bit, potato. A little of it, but either way, I'm excited to see it, Sean. Being the person that's going to be in the photo, Sean, I'm very excited to see what this rendition is going to look like, and the patrons will see it soon. So there you go. Well, let's grab our 8-tracks, pop them in. It's time for the playlist, and let's talk about the smorgasbord of games we played this week, Sean, because there weren't many. So obviously, you didn't play anything other than God of War on PC, right?
Not yet. Nope. Pokemon and God of War is where I'm at. Review coming up on the PlayStation Drive, Extra Mile very, very soon. But I wanted to look at, we'll get to this in a little bit, I think, but games coming, like I need to plan this out a little bit. I need to like reconfigure what I'm going to be doing in February, because my goodness gracious. Yeah. The blast of games is here, man. But what about you? You actually played games.
Yeah. And to be fair, I really didn't play too much of the games I'm about to talk about because one, my work schedule has kind of been crazy lately. And two, I'm actually playing a game for review that I can't talk about yet. So you'll be hearing about that soon, in quotations. But the games I did play because I wanted some smaller experiences that I could kind of like, jump in, kind of bite-sized things to kind of play, to kind of like take a break from the review game that I'm playing, and also just take a break from work and kind of chill. So I actually decided to go back because it's been a while since I replayed both these games, but I was like, you know what? I'm kind of in the mood to replay the Dark Pictures Anthology games, not House of Ashes, because I just played that, a couple months ago when it came out. But because I like that so much, I was like, hey, I haven't played Man of Medan or Little Hope in a while. Maybe I'll go back and, play them again. And maybe I'll feel differently about them this time around. And I'm happy to report, Sean, I may have been overly critical when talking about those games in the past. I don't think they're as bad as I kind of made them out to be when I've talked about them previously. And ultimately, yeah, I actually had fun playing with them this time around.
Are these on Game Pass, or you had bought them before? So you still
I had
obviously
bought them
still
before.
have them.
I still had them. But I think Man of Medan either just left Game Pass or is on Game Pass currently, but that's the only one of the three that's there. Whereas I had picked up all these games at launch, like for each one of them, because they weren't full price experiences. So I kind of was like, and I wanted to give them a chance because I love Supermassive, the studio that makes them, and I love horror games.
Yeah.
So I love this style of game, and I always wanted these to be good. And I still think that they do have their problems, but especially with kind of like the tone of each game and stuff, how it's like, it almost feels like, late 90s to like early 2000s horror versus more of what Until Dawn felt like, where that felt like more like 80s and 90s horror.
More throwback?
Yeah. Like much more of a throwback in a good way. Whereas those games, like Man of Dawn in particular, just felt like a throwback in not of a good way, where it almost felt like I was playing like something like the Fog remake, or I know that what you were doing I know what you did last summer or something like that, which is
that actually sounds pretty good.
Which is something I'm less into.
Got it.
But I do think that they're both good games. I'm willing to say I was wrong. They're good games, and they're worth playing. But it's one of those things where I can understand my disappointment paying full price and then kind of being disappointed with them.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, I do think that like there's always considerations that happen whenever providing an opinion on a game. Is like, did you pay full price for it? Or is there something else going on in your life are you under some sort of like restriction? Like, is there a better way to play it? Like, you think about like a game like Pokemon or any RPG, really, like if you're playing it 20 minutes at a time, you might not actually be having a good time with it. So like there's reasons I think that go into how we formulate our opinions. I think that's a fascinating topic. Maybe that's an extra mile we do one day. I just keep throwing these things like we have no plan for actually coming back to any of these ideas, but I like saying like
just way too much content on the plate already, Sean. You're just throw more on it. Like you're burying us like you buried Skinny Matt. Anyways, let's slam the brakes on this conversation. Let's slam the brakes on this conversation because we got to get into some of this breaking news or else the show's never going to end. So first up, of course, it's the beginning of February. So we got to talk about the Game Pass games coming in the first half of February. And then we'll obviously get another drop later this month. So starting off today, February 3rd, the day you're listening to this, not the day that we're recording this, the following games are live. Contrast, which is an interesting one because that was a PS4 launch game. And
it's Compulsion Games' first game.
Yeah.
It's actually their first game. So yeah, I like that.
And it's coming to Xbox for the first time, which is interesting. And then you've got Dreamscaper, which I know Matt was a big fan of over on the PlayStation Drive. And then Telling Lies, which I talked about on the show last year. It's basically like a full motion video game where you're kind of like solving a mystery. It was kind of like, it was made by the same developers that made Her Story. And it was very much like that, where you're going through a bunch of
It's still on my system.
Yeah.
I still have it. You sold me on it when you were playing it. I definitely want to try it out.
It's pretty cool. So I'm glad it's on Game Pass now. So definitely people should check that one out. And then on February 10th, we get a whole bunch of stuff. We're getting Besiege, which is a game preview game, CrossfireX, including the campaign from Remedy.
Nice.
I'm very excited to check that one out. Edge of Eternity, and then Skull, the Hero Slayer, and as well as The Last Kids on Earth and the Staff of Doom. And then on Valentine's Day, Sean, you can make it a Right as Rain Valentine's Day with Ark Ultimate Survivor Edition and Infernax coming to the service as well on February 14th.
Was Ark in preview up until now? Like, has it left previews recently? What's the deal with that one?
No, so it left preview a while ago, but this is like, they've added a whole bunch of content to Ark over time because it is a live service game. And this is kind of like
super popular.
And essentially this bundles like all of the paid DLC for Ark into one bundle. And they threw it into Game Pass again. I think this bundle's been around for a while, but now it's been added to Game Pass. They basically are upgrading the version of Arc that was already in Game Pass to this version, essentially.
I feel like it's like an understate. Like it's nothing that like anybody, I don't think in our community like really plays, and it doesn't seem to be popular amongst like the podcasters at all. It's just one of those things like that escapes the mainstream, at least the kind of the way we think about it. Everybody else plays it. Like it's a super popular game. So it jumped out at me. The other one that jumped out to me was Edge of Eternity. What is that? That name is so familiar.
I thought that too, but I also didn't know anything about it either. So
maybe it's just that kind of name. It's just video game name.
Yeah. I swear though I've seen some stuff about that game, but my mind's just blanking on it. So
what's your pick of the lot?
My pick of the lot, I mean, to be honest, it's probably going to be Crossfire because I imagine that game's going to be fun. But Telling Lies, again, I think is like an underrated game that I think just a lot of people missed. And it's also going to be a game that I think isn't going to be for everyone either, because not everyone's into kind of like FMV, like detective style games. So if that sounds like your jam, then I think you'll really like that game.
Oh, that reminds me, I fell off a Danganronpa. I got to get back on that. I'm feeling much better these days. I wasn't feeling good when I fired it up and I kept falling asleep, but it was more my fault than the game's fault. So.
Well, again, it's a lot of reading because it's a visual novel. So you've got to be in the right space for a game like that.
I'm in the right space now, man. Like, I don't know if you can tell. Like, I am back at it. I've been resting for a month, dude. Like, I'm ready to go.
You sound
to sit down and play some video games.
Well,
Dying Light reviews are coming out today, dude. Like, that was pretty good.
Well,
not Game Pass
the reviews
related.
are kind of all over the place with that one. And I hear bugs and glitches are a big thing with that game. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Whatever.
I know
it's not 6. It's not a 4.
I mean, the only opinion I need to know about that game, Sean, is what does Donnie Reese think about Dying Light 2? That's what I need to know. But I know I'm not picking it up at launch. I'm gonna wait for
Shots fired at literally everybody else.
or it's just that's how much I respect Donnie Reese's opinion, Sean.
And that's the way that I know that that's what you mean. And I'm just an ass.
Just twisting the knife.
Twisting your words. Yeah.
Well, speaking of twisting your words, Sean, the following games are leaving Game Pass on February 15th. It doesn't matter. I'm trying to move the show on.
Moving on.
On February 15th, we're losing Control, Code Vein, Final Fantasy 12, The Zodiac Age, The Medium, Project Winter, and The Falconeer. So ultimately, I actually think the games leaving Game Pass is actually the better list this month, unfortunately, than the games coming in. Which makes me sad.
I couldn't have said it better myself, man. Every one of those games are really good. The Falconeer is interesting. Maybe not for everybody. Control's kind of strange, but very ambitious. One of the launch games for the Series X, trying to push for 4K 120. Very, very cool. Project Winter is awesome.
Yep.
It's a like dogfighting, like jet fight game. It's really, really good and looks amazing as well. The Medium, of course, very storied in the history of the launch of the console. How are you with the Control as well, dude? Control is very good. Yep. Code Vein, I didn't get to. I wanted to get to that one big time, and I just shoot.
And then Final Fantasy 12 we knew was going to leave at some point because the Square signed that deal with PlayStation Now to put all the Final Fantasy games there. So they've been steadily leaving over the last couple months. So that's not entirely unexpected. But I wasn't expecting.
Sony. They're making everything exclusive over there. You know, they're just buying everything up.
It's the power of PlayStation Now, Sean, the greatest, service. I can't even say that with a straight face or even just without cracking up. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not as good as Game Pass.
You almost made it.
It's not as good as Game Pass.
Good for you.
But yeah, so ultimately, I think it's a rough list of games. So ultimately, if you do want to play these games, it's the toughest time to recommend them now, but
no kidding.
Play them now or forever hold your peace on a lot of these. Or pick them up while they're on sale.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next up, speaking of Game Pass, MLB The Show 22 returns to Xbox and Game Pass this year on April 5th. We didn't know if they were going to do this year's version of the game on Game Pass, but they did. And I was actually genuinely surprised about that they made that deal again. But at the same time, I'm excited to see it come to Game Pass. So before I go to your opinion about this news story, we want to bring in Joel, aka Falcon, at Joel, aka Falcon on Twitter, who asked the question, with MLB The Show being on Xbox Game Pass day one once again, does this prove that being on Game Pass was a successful venture in the eyes of the MLB? So Sean, what do you think about this news and what do you think about Joel's question?
I think that that's exactly what it does. You're right. Like it was such a gut punch last year. It was such an ego kind of thing. Like, and I'm sure it fanned the flames of the console wars and whatnot. And I think I even heard some people go like, maybe Sony didn't know, maybe it was a surprise to them. Like I doubt it. You know, I don't know that was quite as sneaky as maybe some of the commentary about it made it to believe. But I think both the MLB and actually I would add Sony as well learned a lot from that in terms of how giving access for day one actually benefited the game. And you're probably going to see that come out with, what is it, Spartacus? I'm sure that will have impacted what Sony's plans are overall. My question back to you, Joel Brooks, or maybe Ryan, and people go to YouTube to answer this as well. Is it required for this to be annual now? Now it's 2 years in a row. Is it like is the expectation set now forever? In perpetuity, MLB The Show will be day and date in Game Pass? And if so, if Sony does their own thing, does it have to be day and date with Sony's thing?
So as far as Xbox as a platform is concerned for this game, I think they got to keep doing this now that they set this precedent 2 years in a row. Like otherwise people aren't going to buy this game on Xbox or likewise, it's not going to, if it suddenly doesn't come to Game Pass 1 year, it's not going to increase in physical or digital sales in the way that they probably would expect. So in a way they might as well just take the money from Microsoft then at that point, right? Because they're not really, they probably wouldn't make as much as just putting it on Game Pass in kind of the increased number of sales you'd get by kind of removing it from Game Pass day one. So yeah, I honestly think that it's here to stay on Game Pass unless for whatever reason Microsoft doesn't want to pony up the money 1 year or something like that.
That's true. Yeah, there's definitely two sides of the story here. And is it adding value to Game Pass? I think it is. The other side of it too, before we even get to the Sony side, is like, what does this do for like EA? Like obviously like the sports world is really dominated by EA, but this is a sports game made by a Sony studio. We don't really get this with EA Play. You have to kind of pay more for it with the premium side of things over there. Yeah, I mean, and EA has been getting closer and closer to day one releases in, EA Access. So I actually think that we maybe see a day where they do have day and date games in EA Play. I mean, they do it already with the premium subscription on PC.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. But I think maybe they eventually roll that into their current subscription model at some point.
Yeah. That's wild. They don't have it on PC or on console, a premium version of it. That is strange. The heck?
It's just PC only, which is bizarre. But we're at the point though where I would expect, because like the Super Bowl's coming up, I think Madden's coming to Game Pass later this month. So
true enough.
Like, and NHL is probably not far behind it. So I expect like the turnaround for these games is like you have maybe 6 months of having to buy the game before it comes to Game Pass, and at that point you may as well just wait, right? So.
And I don't think we have it in our notes, but EA they had a whatever quarterly thing, and they talked about how Madden and FIFA were just like as good as ever before. Right. So I think like they're not really all incentivized to chase anything else. Like they're probably good with their model at this stage.
Yeah. The only thing that hurt apparently was Battlefield. That's what they said in kind of the earnings recall, where it just didn't live up to their expectations. And we've already seen that with the player numbers.
We were shocked to hear that.
The player numbers for Battlefield 2042 are actually lower than Battlefield 5's at the moment. So
at the same time, oh my gosh, that is wild. So final question on this. I know we might be going long on it, but I have a question about like now Sony has like kind of first party experience with releasing a game that they've made day and date. Like how much do you think that impacts what their own subscription service might look like? I still think that day one, they still don't put day and date games on their service just because they strike me as not wanting to do that with like at all. Like they've been so resistant to it so far. I don't know if this changes it, but I think it maybe ups the timeline for when they might consider doing that. That's why I don't think it'll be a right away thing with Spartacus, but I think eventually you will see with Spartacus kind of hinting at what Phil Spencer was talking about when he was hearing the rumblings of Spartacus itself, because he made a tweet about this where he talked about they basically have to do it.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. So I expect this will happen eventually. But I don't think it'll be when they launch Spartacus. I don't think it'll be day one kind of like perk for the service.
So yesterday on the Nintendo Drive, Kato and I realized that sometimes we'll just like throw out predictions, and then if we're asked the same question a week or two later, that we might have a different answer. I think we need to lock this thing in, and somehow we need to have it like as part of like we put on the Patreon page or in the Discord or as a pin post or something like that. This I think we need to lock in on. I've got your answer. I'm going to be a little more bullish on this. I think they are going to go day and date. They will announce it, and I'm very curious. People in the Sony side might know more about this than me about what games are like slated to come out. I get this feeling like at this moment in PlayStation land, they're in terms of the number of games that they're going to be releasing from first parties, they're kind of in the same spot that Xbox was when they announced day and date, which was coming up on Sea of Thieves, Crackdown 3 and State of Decay 2. I think they're kind of in the same spot, and it would be very interesting to see like, okay, in 2022, you'll get like Gran Turismo and that's it. Like what else are they doing in first party land?
Well, they got that. They got Horizon, but then they I think
right, but that's
besides
in like 3
first
days.
Party stuff and God of War. I still think God of War is coming out this year.
Yeah, that'd be a good get.
So I
think they will. In short, I think they absolutely will. I think this will be the year that they do it. They come out swinging, and I think the reason I think that is because they've learned from MLB The Show that you can still do this and you'll still sell millions of copies regular.
Right. Well, especially with people on PlayStation 2, because people in the PlayStation ecosystem are very conditioned to buy their games anyways.
You're right.
Like they're the type of people that don't like services like this, or at least the majority of that audience is kind of that way. So
they've actually set themselves up well for this, Ryan, because they made their first party game $70. So you actually, they've done a really good job to go like, you could do the $70. You've already accepted it, or a nice subscription package to take the sting out of that $70 price.
Exactly. I think it'll be an easy sell if they go down that road and decide to do that.
I can't wait.
And I'm already pretty excited for the service already, because I mean, PSP games on PS5, Sean, I'm ready for that future. Let me tell you what.
PS Vita TV or whatever it was called.
I have
Vita
one of
TV
those.
thing.
I have it's on my desk somewhere. All right, and then last news story I wanted to cover for the week. There's some more on the doc, but you can check in the show notes with some of the other things we had in mind. But Sony has acquired Bungie for $3.6 billion. It was stated when this happened that Destiny 2 would remain multi-platform and that Bungie will continue to operate independently and self-publish all their games going forward. Now, again, this is a Sony story and not an Xbox story, but I feel it's important for us to talk about because, number one, it's really weird that the creators of Halo now belong to Sony. It's just, that's a weird sentence to say. Almost as weird as the fact that, Crash Bandicoot belongs to Microsoft. But here we are. That's just the reality we live in. But I think this caught everyone off guard this week, where people were not expecting this. But Sean, before I go to Tyler Kopp's question about this, what do you think about this?
I think it blows everybody's minds, because really what have we been talking about with Sony is that like they're not a $1 trillion company. Some of their biggest acquisitions were like Insomniac for like a couple $100 million. I'm not sure about the details about some of these others that we've chatted about, but I don't think anybody was thinking that they had billions in their wallet. And they do. So now it's a whole new game. We already decided that everybody was fair game when Microsoft spends $80 billion or $70 billion on Activision. It's just nuts. I don't think anybody saw this coming to this level. And I'm also very surprised at the messaging coming out of this in terms of the remaining multi-platform. I'm just going to go ahead and say this. I don't buy it. I don't believe it. And I think I'm expecting for that narrative to change swiftly. And because I don't think that even in PlayStation land that they've earned a lot of trust for that sort of thing. We believe in generations is a thing. Like there's countless other examples, I think, where they've kind of turned back on their word a little bit. And I think
especially with this regime
one.
With Jim Ryan specifically.
That's right. Yeah. Or we would never do day one, releases for a subscription service. I think all the things that they say, I don't buy it at all. It's not a shot. I just don't think that they have too much of a history of going back on some of these things I'm just saying objective about it. Yeah. But hopefully they still do multi-platform stuff. Bungie is one of the most talented studios on the planet. So it's a huge get for PlayStation. And I think it's just a matter of how does it add to their overall plan? I think it's just revenue generation to have as many people playing Bungie games as possible, and they've got that model down pat. But it totally eliminates what everybody was saying, that Bungie wanted to be independent to a certain degree. But it does seem like they are remaining maybe somewhat independent. So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah,
for
I mean,
them.
that's
we've
just-
been down this road before.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it sounds like, but you never know. Like, what if when Jim Ryan retires and someone else takes the role? Like, that could change in a hurry, especially with them being owned by Sony. And also, I think Destiny in particular, I don't see them. First of all, I don't know when we're ever going to see a Destiny 3 at this point. Like, that could be years and years and years away. We know Bungie is working on a new IP that they announced, I think it was last year or the year before. Right. That's supposed to be coming out in like 2025 at this point. And I imagine,
is that an exclusive?
I imagine that's an exclusive. And
I agree.
Versus this, which is like, they're going to keep Destiny 2 up and running on Microsoft's platforms in the same way that, Microsoft is keeping Minecraft going on PlayStation. So that's why I don't think that changed, but I'm kind of on the same track as you as far as them not keeping everything multi-platform. I really don't think that the future of Bungie is multi-platform.
Future games, I should be clear. Yeah, Destiny will stay multiplayer. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, anything that comes out in the future, I would maybe argue they might put Destiny 3 multi-platform if they ever do a Destiny 3, but the new IP from Bungie, like, I would not count on that coming to Xbox, especially with them losing Call of Duty at this point too on PlayStation possibly. So I think that's going to do it a little bit. But I also thought this was interesting too, because we got another tweet from Jeff Keighley yesterday talking about how there are more company acquisitions in the works, and don't expect this to be the end of it. And also Jim Ryan's comments after they announced that they bought Bungie, and they said they're not done either and expect more soon. So it sounds like the acquisition wars have begun and it's happening, and oh my God, I can't believe it. But
we need it now. And another thing we need to lock in our guesses. Who's next? We should have an order and the amount. We should have some sort of like prize associated with this. I think we'll be the first ones to do it, Ryan. I shouldn't even be saying this out loud. We should be planning this.
Exactly. Well, let's bring in Tyler Kopp at AcidTK03. Now, he didn't ask a specific question in regards to this story, but he asked a Bungie related question. So I thought it'd fit here. He asks, was Bungie still in control of the Xbox 360 Halo servers? Do you think Sony buying Bungie had something to do with them being shut off recently? Or do you think it was time to see them go? Tyler, I don't think it has anything to do with that, because the servers for Microsoft's games, especially first party games, are actually done by Microsoft themselves.
Yeah,
in-house.
always have been.
They've been like that since Xbox Live launched. So it's not a peer-to-peer thing or even run by the developers in the same situation that we saw with like even up until like PlayStation 4 era PlayStation. So yeah, in Xbox land, that's not how that works. I think it was just time to sunset them. I think that's ultimately what they came down to.
Big time.
Yeah. The player count was probably just not high enough to, justify keeping them on ultimately. But anyways, let's let some of our friends into the car with us, Sean. It is time for the carpool, and we got lots of questions again. So thank you to everyone who wrote in questions this week. Also, we got a question about how to ask questions on the Discord yesterday. So I want to reiterate, here's how you ask questions to be on the show. Number one, follow us on Twitter at Yumi Caprice. We tweet out a question post, usually by Sean, either Wednesday morning or Tuesday afternoon, asking for questions, or you can join the Discord, the Yumi Capri Discord. It's free to join. The link's in the show notes. Just go to the Xbox Drive section, tag one of us with your question, and tell us it's for the show. We'll answer it on the show. Or last but not least, if you're watching us on YouTube, just leave your question in the comments of the video, and we will answer it on the show. We even have a YouTube question in here as well. So that's another option as well. So let's start with Mike, aka Zero Skill at Zero Skill 1. And he asks, if the Xbox family of consoles were vehicles, what kind of vehicle do you think each console would be one through the series? So I guess he's asking, basically going all the way back to the Xbox One VCR, all the way up to the Series X and S. So this is an interesting question that I didn't really think about ahead of time. So Sean, do you have ideas about this? What kind of cars represent our Xbox consoles?
The original Xbox is a double-decker bus, like London style double-decker bus. The 360 is a Dodge Viper. It's much more slick and's got a little curves to it. The Xbox One is a city transit bus.
Of course.
And what the heck is this Series X, man? You got to help me out on this one. I don't know.
How many block cars are there out there, Sean? That are just like rectangular prisms.
It's actually like a toy. I think I actually have like toys with my kids, like just an actual like block. It's a Boy Scouts used to do like cars. It was a Cub car. If anybody knows what a Cub car is, that's what it is.
Sure. I don't know anything
an
about
actual vehicle.
I don't know anything about cars. So
they would give you like a chunk of wood and you'd carve it out and paint it and throw wheels on the side of it.
Oh, so like a wooden toy car or something like that.
Yeah, it's a wooden toy car.
Okay. I mean, I don't know anything about cars, so I don't really have a good answer for this question, so I'm just going to steal Sean's answers and just move on.
I mean, I probably could have done something a little bit more powerful, but I'm not going to.
Makes sense.
That's too cliche. So yeah, a couple buses, a Viper, and a toy car.
I mean, the Xbox Series X is probably some kind of Tesla vehicle, probably like that futuristic car that I'm blanking on the name of that kind of looks like the Batmobile in the Christopher Nolan movies.
Oh, nice. Mm-hmm.
But besides that, I don't really have any different answers to kind of answer up here. Next up, Dan at Dano12 asks, which letter or name do you go with for the next console of the Xbox Series? Ultimately, for me personally, Ryan Turford, I think they probably go with the E, because they've already done S, they've already done X, and if you look back at the previous console history as far as Xbox is concerned, that's the other letter they tend to go with, because they did that for Xbox 360.
360.
So I imagine that's what they go with next. Otherwise, maybe you go with Y, I guess. But Sean, what do you think? What letter should they go with next?
They can't go with Y, because they'd be like, why buy this? Like no, I don't know. I agree with you, E. I actually, and I like looking at the history there as well. I'm very curious. Like, you can't add an S to this stuff. You can have an XS, but that's very Apple. You can't have an SS because that's a little, Nazi-ish. I don't know, man. I think an E, maybe T. Does it even matter really at this stage?
Probably not. And it also probably depends on what the model is, as far as what it does differently.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Because like, what if it's like a diskless version of the Series X? Then is it like the Xbox Series X SAD edition or something like that? That's what I mean. It just depends. It would just more depend on what type of things you're getting with the model.
The dongle thing, like the Roku kind of model, has got to be like a T, like for TV or something.
Right. And Dan also gives us the option of throwing a name in there. But ultimately, we talked about this when they announced the name of the Series S and X. But I don't think Microsoft at this point, barring some marketing strategy telling them otherwise, moves away from the Series name going forward. Because I think their idea is now their line of consoles going forward, regardless of generation, is just going to be called Xbox. And then there will be like a model number associated with it, kind of like what Apple does with iPhones, essentially. I think that's kind of the line of logic here. So I don't think the next gen Xbox consoles aren't going to be replacing the Series name with something else like Xbox One again, or Xbox Two or something like that. Like, they're not going to do something like that again. I think they'll just
I want them to drop
it. Something.
No, I want them to drop Series. I would love to see that. I don't think it's very strong, to be honest with you. And I don't know that. How do you do is it Series X2? Like, I don't understand how they really do the next more powerful version of the Series X. I actually would like to see the next whatever generation thing to be something else. Maybe they tighten up. Maybe it's just Xbox 1, 2, 3 Xbox. I don't know, but I'm with you that they are going to look to streamline it and maybe more just like a family of things. But I don't know if Series is the forever answer for that.
Makes sense. And I mean, as a wise man once said, it could be anything at this point.
Could be anything.
It could be. Next up, Ryan Masano at Mainsano13 asks, do you guys think that they are going to make Starfield consoles and controllers? Love the show. I listen every Thursday on my long run. So first of all, Ryan, thank you so much for checking out the show and listening to us on your run. I mean, you're running right now. Hopefully you're doing okay. As far as, Starfield consoles and controllers, believe it or not, this is something I talked about with Garrett Blade yesterday, because we have an episode of the RPG Cave coming up this weekend all about Bethesda Game Studios. And we talked about Starfield actually quite a lot on that show. I actually think they're going to do like a Starfield console like they did with Halo this year.
I agree.
As well as a custom controller. And I have no idea. I can't, even fathom to begin to, comprehend what that's even going to look like, because
make it a spaceship.
We literally don't know anything about that game at this point. It'll probably be maybe like the logo that we kind of see in like the middle of the Starfield art, which is almost like that yellow, that orange and white stripe thing going like vertically.
It kind of is reminiscent of like astronaut badges that they would have for like their missions and stuff like that. I would love to see that. I think this is going to be a massive game. I think we're going to see it absolutely huge. And oh my goodness, McDonald's makes this It's way onto the show. Thank you, Ellie. Oh, I appreciate. Look at it. We got a brand new Diet Coke. We made it, Ryan. We did it.
We did it.
Our obligations to McDonald's are over. I think Starfield, as we head into E3 or what would typically be E3, Starfield's going to be massive. And just that thought gets me hyped about it. Of course, I don't know anything about the game. There's a lot of kind of history with Bethesda, and when Fallout 4 launched, people were kind of upset, and Fallout 76 certainly very buggy, and just those open worlds are kind of a mess. And yet still here I am because I love space and I believe in God Howard is kind of just what I'm going on here, Ryan. But I think they can make this like a huge event. And I'm actually kind of surprised that it didn't seem like Halo was that big an event for its launch coming last year, just with the separation of multiplayer and single player.
Yeah.
I feel like they would typically do something bigger. They still got 20 million players over on Halo. But yeah, I think Starfield's going to be huge. All the things.
And actually that goes back to your point about how they separated things, where I think that really just made it less of a big event than it used to be, where, there used to be, combined with the fact that we don't really have like midnight launches for games anymore and stuff like that. Like, I think some of that plays into kind of like the Halo hype, at least a little bit. Cause like I used to have so many memories of standing in line waiting for Halo games at midnight and so many great memories kind of associated with that. And that really fed into that hype for Halo. But Starfield's going to be a big thing later this year. I'm excited to see what they do with it and what the Starfield console is going to look like. Cause I think it'll be really cool. I'm like 90% confident they're going to do one. So
big time. Yep.
Next up, Tori Ham at Tori Ham on Twitter asks, if you could design a miniature golf course themed around any Xbox IP, what would that be? I'm just going to throw it there before you even start because I don't want you to steal my answer, even though I know you won't. Fusion Frenzy. I want to see a Fusion Frenzy.
That's a great answer.
Miniature golf course. You integrate some of the elements from the Fusion Frenzy mini games in there, like Twisted System and the bumper car one and stuff like that, and build that into like a mini golf course. I think would be really fun. But Sean, what do you think about this question?
Any question now that has anything to do with Xbox IP is like it's StarCraft, it's Call of Duty, it's World of Warcraft, it's all these things. But I'm gonna go kind of typical Xbox, something that people might think about more traditional. I'm gonna go with Gears of War. And thinking about the locust holes that you got to plug in at the end of every single one. You got your mini golf ball is actually a grenade, and plugging that thing, you're gonna have sound effects. It's gonna be basically a mix of mini golf and pinball, like with objective based mini golf. You know what I mean? You get extra points. Yeah, you hide behind it's cover based mini golf.
Do you have to if you play mini golf at night in that golf course? Do you have to worry about the krill and razor hail and a whole bunch of other things that'll just eat you if you're not in cover?
Definitely. And every time, you even have to, you don't carry your ball from hole to hole. You'll have to have some sort of active reload to get your ball.
Of course.
And if you mess it up, then of course, oh, come on.
You got to move really slowly. Exactly.
Yeah. You got to save Dom's wife, but of course you can't.
Also, there has to be a hole where you have to, smash some tomatoes in order to get to it. So then you're like, my tomatoes.
Carmine just doesn't stand a chance.
Of course. You don't want to be the person wearing the Carmine helmet when you're on the golf course. All right. Next up, Brent on Discord asks, do we want Guitar Hero with just guitars back or the whole band instrument set up and running? And we actually got a couple Guitar Hero things thanks to our discussion last week's show. Sean, do you want the whole band experience back from Guitar Hero or just the guitars?
I want the whole band. I do think starting it back up again with just the guitar is not a bad idea, but I think I love the whole band experience. I've talked about how I prefer the drums and the original, the Explorer guitar is the best guitar of all the Guitar Heroes and rock bands and everything. I'm going to add on to this and say I'd also like to keep the Guitar Hero Metallica, Guitar Hero, well, I guess Rock Band did the Beatles and whatever else. But
Guitar Hero did a bunch of stuff too. They did Metallica and Aerosmith and a bunch of
Metallica was the best one. Oh, dude, yeah. Aerosmith was actually before the whole band came out. I've got both those, and those are some of my favorite bands. Metallica and Aerosmith, that was perfect for that stuff. Yeah. But I'm an old man now, Ryan. Who knows what band they'll choose this time? I mean, Post Malone or something.
Oh God. Please no. I think actually Post Malone has a song in Rock Band now because again, Rock Band DLC has been continuing ever since Rock Band 4 came out. So
Guitar Hero Macklemore, The Weeknd.
I mean, just bring back Band Hero while you're at it, Sean, and then we'll just go from there.
No, but definitely the whole band thing. Yes, please.
Yeah, I actually agree with that too because I felt like we've been kind of missing something because even with Rock Band 4, it's the drums for the current gen version of that game is they're so hard to find that you basically just play it with the guitar now if you play Rock Band 4 at all, if you can find any instruments for that game. So I would love to see kind of the whole band kind of return because I love that. All right. Next up, TPR on Discord asks, how do you think Xbox can effectively manage its inherited but quote unquote dead IP moving forward? For example, we haven't seen a new Banjo since Nuts and Bolts, and with the Activision Blizzard King joining the mix, Crash 4 gets some credence here, Spyro, Guitar Hero, and the list goes on of franchises that we haven't heard a ton about. Heck, what about a sequel to Prey in 2017? It feels like there's a high chance of one-off reboots without any follow-up due to the massive amount of IP Phil now has to manage. How do you think this can be navigated? So do you think that there's a worry that maybe a lot of the IP that are forgotten about maybe comes back in the wrong way or just isn't handled properly? Sean, what do you think?
Definitely. There's a lot of ways this could go catastrophically wrong, to be honest with you, but I've got a pretty objective approach here that I want to throw your way. There's a lot of lessons and data that can be captured by just putting all these old games on Game Pass and seeing what people do. Just what games are people actually playing? What appetite is there for some of these games to maybe come back? And I think that might give them some indication. It can't be 100%. You can't just be like all science and no heart with this. So some of these I think are, and I also think it depends on like what people want to play. So my number one answer is put them on Game Pass, the old games, see what people pick up and play, see how much excitement gets around there, but also talk to the developers and say like, we've got all these things. What do you want to do? Is kind of how I would tackle it.
Yeah, it goes back to what we talked about when we had our discussion about Activision Blizzard, where I really hope that Phil is just going to each team and is like, what do you want to work on? And not basically force them to do something they don't want to work on, because that's the lesson that we learned just from the way Activision does things, where they kind of force developers onto projects they didn't necessarily want to go to or weren't really equipped to do so. And then we saw the results of that. Like even something like going back to like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5, for example, and just seeing the mess that was. It's just like,
well, and then like, how did Fable come up? I'd love to know the story about how Fable came about and how it ended up at Playground. Like that's something that it's very similar to this kind of situation. This is a franchise that they didn't seem to really have a plan for. It seemed like the only team that was going to work on it, they closed down. So how did that work? I
imagine they went with a pitch. It was some kind of pitch and was like, hey, we want to work on Fable next. Here's our idea for it, kind of.
Playground. Oh, okay, yeah, Playground. Yeah, got it. So yeah, it's just a matter of like, I guess, communicating to all the devs that like these are all available. Like, put some thoughts together. I think that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Next up, Kirbyville on Discord asks, pre-deal completion, what would you like to see come to Game Pass from Activision Blizzard first? Example, how Bethesda put Doom Eternal on there before the deal was complete. I don't necessarily know if we're going to get any games ahead of time, but if I had to add one, first of all, I think the first thing they would add is the older Call of Duty games, like, or even like by the time the next Call of Duty comes out this year, they put Vanguard in there. I think that would be a smart move. Something like Diablo 3, I think is a perfect game for Game Pass. Or even Diablo 2 Resurrected, the one that came out last year. I think those are the type of games where I'd like to see on there, where they're more like the multiplayer based games first, and then they do like the single player stuff after that. Like eventually, like we'll see like something like Tony Hawk or Crash. I don't think comes to the surface until after the deal's done.
Ooh, interesting.
Sean, what do you think about this?
It's funny, yeah, because when you think about Bethesda, it seemed like they did a couple and then they kind of rounded it off a little bit later, didn't they? Yeah. And you're right. I think it could probably be something similar in that. And honestly, like games, I agree with literally everything that you said. So it's not really any sense for me to just reiterate it. But like, man, I think that Spyro remaster, that is excellent. I cannot get enough of that thing. I can't wait for that to hit Game Pass. Diablo, of course. I talked about this when the announcement was made earlier, but like the PC side is well satisfied with this deal. All the StarCrafts coming to Game Pass, I think, make a whole lot of sense, and all the rest. But really, StarCraft on PC, big deal for me because I think that game is great, and all the historical stuff with StarCraft and Warcraft 2, like give me all that stuff. I would love to see that. They're
all on GOG at this point. Like I imagine they take those versions and then put them on the Microsoft Store and then add them to Game Pass. So you get to play Diablo 1 on Game Pass or
Diablo 2 Resurrected. Now we're just naming games, I guess. But Diablo 2 Resurrected, by the time this all happens, I could see that as being one of the you pair up like Diablo 2 Resurrected, Call of Duty Vanguard, StarCraft on PC. And that might be good enough just for a first kick at it. Like that's massive.
I imagine like the first wave of games is going to be very small, kind of like the Bethesda one. So, and then they'll kind of put like them in droves. So like packs of 20 essentially per drop. All right, last question before we got to go comes to us from Eric Cave on YouTube, who asks, Rock Band is way better than Guitar Hero. Just saying. I still play it all the time. I've somehow managed to finish both Halo Infinite's campaign and Battle Pass this week.
Wow.
Now I'm just looking at getting 100% completion. Do you recommend I jump into a new playthrough on Legendary following a guide, or wait for a patch that allows the replaying of missions, or another strategy altogether? How close are you guys to reaching 100%? So ultimately, Eric, I haven't actually gone back to Halo's campaign since we reviewed it, because again, like I basically have to start over from the beginning, and I'm just kind of waiting until I'm kind of in the mood again to play that game again and play through the campaign again. That just hasn't happened since our review happened. So I'm kind of biding my time, combined with the fact that something Eric brought up here, which is eventually a patch to replay missions. Cause I think the next time I want to go back, I want to 100% it, get all the skulls and stuff like that. And the only way to do that is with the ability to replay certain missions, unless you use an exact guide and go through it the entire time. And I don't know if I necessarily want to do that, and especially on a replay. So ultimately, Eric, I think if you want to do a 100% completion on Legendary, I would just wait. I would just wait till the patch comes out that eventually enables the ability to replay missions. I think that's just a big thing. And maybe just, play something else instead of Halo for a while. But Sean, what do you think about this question?
First of all, shots fired on Guitar Hero. Don't appreciate it, but I also understand that I'm probably in the minority because I do prefer Guitar Hero. So that's what Eric is talking about there. I personally, I'm right with you exactly all the way. Wait for the patch. I'm actually really looking forward to playing that co-op with other people and just jumping into that world again. I think that would be great. I think it was also interesting that Joseph Staten? Staten. He said that the roadmap is still coming for the rest of the year. So I don't know, man. I guess it kind of depends on, like, do you feel like you're done? I don't know how you, after completing everything you've completed, that you'd even want to do anything more at this stage, and wait for the game to kind of like refresh itself a little bit. And we just talked about all the other games that are coming out, Game Pass and all the other things. I think now would be a great, like, you've done the things, just walk away for a little bit, maybe experience something else, and then and later on in the springtime, it'll be perfect Halo time again. Or
even like waiting till the end of the year, because we know that that next piece of content is coming. So because they've already
go 100% Forza. Go back into Horizon 5, man. That game is excellent.
Or play some of the games on Game Pass that I talked about that are leaving soon. Like check some of those out, like Control.
Yeah, it sounds like he's got time on his hands.
Yes, if you haven't played like Control or Code Vein or the Medium, and if any of those games like interest you, you should play them. Like instead of Halo, like do that. That's my recommendation. Anyways, we got to go, but before we go, Sean, plugs go.
You can find me on Twitter and on Twitch at Sean Capri, Sean like Connery, Capri like the pants. And if you want a picture of Ryan Turford riding a moose, maybe dressed as a Canadian Mountie, go to patreon.com/Yumi Capri.
As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You can find us on Twitter at Yumi Capri's, on YouTube at youtube.com/Yumi Capri, and on podcast services around the globe. So for Sean Capri, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been episode 225 of the Xbox Drive, and we're out.
In stereo. The Xbox Drive is fueled by patrons at patreon.com/Yumi Capri. And from the bottom of my heart, I am so grateful to the more than 70 patrons who support us each and every month, with a special thanks to our Capremium producers, Dallas Ford, Lee Navarro, the fearless leader of the Phoenix Overdrive Extra Life team. You can join me and the rest of the Phoenix Overdrive team at extra-life.org and raise money for the kids. And Jonathan Brown, the man behind the music on this show and the Nintendo Drive. You can download his latest album, In My Element, on Spotify and Apple Music. Our platinum producers, Robbie Bobby Miller and Trucker Sloth, and all of our gold members, Argo, Brendan Myers, Dallas Robbins, Dano, Emily O'Kelly, Foolish Fuji, Joel Brooks, Jose Jimenez, Mac Time, Marcus O'Neill, Mr. and Mrs. Nasty Boots, RJ Kern, Skinny Matt, Tony Baker, and Xavier Reyes. If you'd like to support the show, go to patreon.com/Yumi Capri and choose the tier that works for you.